Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to install a set of Hodbodies race bodywork on our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R1 STG project bike. The set of bodywork that we got to work with, right, was one of the first molds they made. They made sets off of a racer's bodywork to begin with, okay? And I want to talk to you about that a little bit because we actually got involved. I got involved here and helped them with this to get a good finished product and make what I feel is an important change to the mold to make this work better for everyone and not just racers who are replacing the ECU and relocating it on the bike. Over on the left side of the motorcycle, if you haven't taken yours apart yet, right here, your ECU is held in by this piece of body trim right here. Okay, there's a little cap that goes over it to cover the wires. There is a cooling duct that's molded into this closeout panel as well as that piece. The ECU is close to the motor. There's a lot of heat there, and obviously Yamaha was concerned about that. There's also a pair of heat shielding insulation on the back side of this plastic panel. In my opinion, that stuff's really important. Okay, they did all that for a reason. Certainly it wasn't for aesthetics. They wanted to keep that ECU operating at a certain temperature because high temps can influence the way the stuff is working, and they don't want that. So that said, the initial mold had this piece all molded in it here, this piece here. All this would have been covered up by race bodywork, and you would have had to deal with the ECU. Right? If you bought a race ECU, you're talking another few $1,000s. A kit ECU would relocate it, I think, to the back of the bike and you'd be okay, but for most riders that doesn't make sense. I wanted to help Roger and Hodbodies get to a finished product that made sense for the everyday user and the racer, okay? This piece right here, I looked this stuff up online, OEM parts. This piece, about $20 a side, okay? These painted pieces, right? These are roughly $100 a side. So they're not even really that expensive at the end of the day. Okay, so the right way to do this body work, without a doubt, to keep this cooling duct active for this ECU is to make the change that I made, trimming all this off and modifying the fit to keep this in place. We're gonna start back here with installing the tail. I've already drilled all the holes, I've already fit the body work, okay? Make sure you take your passenger pegs off. That's going to be key. This panel, I feel, needs to stay on here. The seat support, right, ends up pretty close to this. This gives this a good level of support when you're sitting on it. And there's one other thing that I'd like to have you do is use some sort of a spacer right here where you're going to mount up the actual tail. I feel that if you keep it about 1/4 of an inch away from this, right, you're going to get longer life out of it. It's going to kind of sandwich the fiberglass between the thickness of the spacer here, right, and the bolt. And you're not going to be putting a bunch of pressure on it. You can see how there's this boss right here in this fuel tank support, okay? The fiberglass would end up contacting that. It's just not going to be a good scenario. So about 1/4 inch. I use this OEM metal top hat looking spacer, okay? Thin side down, thick side up. You could go to any hardware store and get a 1/4 inch nylon spacer of about the same width, right? Same diameter, and use it. It would work just fine. Okay, now that we've covered the spacer, to put the tail on, right? The first thing we want to do is slide it in position, right? And you want to get that brace tucked up inside there, as well as the molds, right? The bosses that come off of the actual subframe for the rear passenger pegs. Next up, you want to begin to work it over in this direction. Okay, stuff's pretty flexible. The warmer it is, the more flexible it's going to be. Okay, first thing we're going to do is tuck that piece of plastic trim up in there. Like so. Patience here is really going to pay off, okay? Don't just go crazy with it. What you can also do, two things. If you're going to keep this thing a race bike, right, you could trim this there really is no need for it if you're not going to take this back to full street, okay, at any point. We're going to, so I want to keep that all in place. So realistically, you could cut these ears off either side, and this tail would come on and off that motorcycle, off this motorcycle in just a second, okay? But because of the fact that we're using this thing for a test mule and putting all these different parts on it, that is not an option for us. So, you know, I'm going to need to be able to get this thing over. Once again, you want to be careful with it. Kind of keep moving it around until we get it over. Like so. The right thing to do if you're gonna make yours a race bike would be to trim that panel, because there's no reason, right, to leave that, right? You're not gonna use it to secure anything. Gonna use our top hats here. Put them in place, right? Fat side up, thin side down. When you drill the holes for this, I would recommend starting with the holes at the back. Okay, over to this side, slide this in. I'm gonna come up with a better solution than this, something captured, right? So I don't have to deal with this every time, tail on, tail off. And the other thing I'm gonna do is probably gonna order up a second one of those plastic braces that runs across, so I don't have to deal with stretching the tail so far each time. You know, because it is flexible, but still that's pretty nerve-wracking. Like I said, set your gap, okay, back here first, and then determine where you're gonna drill up front, right? I would have preferred that, I did that initially, I didn't, right, but I'm passing that along to you. I think you're gonna get just a better end product. This is good, but it could be a little bit better in my opinion. Superbike tail. You're gonna need to put on a foam pad on the seat. We've got that stuff available all over the website. Lots of good stuff there. Okay, and that is what it's gonna take to install the tail on the motorcycle. Okay, now for the upper fairing. Two things. First off, I put the stock windscreen in here, right? Was able to fit it no problem. We're using the stock upper fairing stay. There is a cutout molded into the windshield on both sides here, okay? That lines up with these tangs on the upper fairing stay. I haven't looked to see what the cost of this fairing stay is, but you know, considering the fact that it's plastic, I'm hoping that it's fairly affordable. Okay, definitely lightweight for sure, so they used a plastic fairing stay. I haven't seen that before. Another thing that I ran into once I had it installed that I thought I should make a little correction with was this rubber intake duct here. It looked flimsy enough that at speed it could maybe push down, right? And there's no provisions here to hook this up. Okay, so what I did is I took a little safety wire in there just to add some rigidity, and I kind of pulled it up a little bit so that it was tucked up in there a bit, and I don't think that it would allow it to come down. You know, that's one solution. I'll probably continue to tinker with that until I come up with something better, but I think that was a good start. Fitting the fairing. We're gonna use a lot of the stock fasteners on this bike and a lot of our stock mounting points, okay? First thing we're gonna do is get this bad boy lined up here. And I want to get those tabs to dip in the holes on the windscreen, like so. And then we're going to use every racer's best friend, cable ties, for fasteners up here. What I did is, after fitting the windscreen, right, I slid this up in place, I held it, I took a drill bit from the backside through the holes in the fairing stay, and I scratched the surface of the fairing to mark it, took it off, drilled it, and they ended up in basically a perfect spot. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to feed through, instead of using bolts here, I like to use cable ties. I've found that if you have a tip over, that sometimes this will reduce the amount of damage because the cable ties will just tear, right? If you have it bolted and it's rigid, it puts a lot more pressure on everything and it tends to break the fairings more. So, all right, ugly side on the back. End of the day, it doesn't look too bad. Up and through. Obviously, I will cut those off. Now we're going to go up. And we'll get that lower fairing in place. I literally drilled this on all of the dimples that were in it, okay? There is one adjustment I feel that we're going to need to make. It's right here. If we leave this piece of fiberglass on here, it's pretty darn close to this pipe, okay? With this particular mold, right? So what I may need to do is put a spacer behind here to pull this out, and I'll kind of show you that here as we work with it a little bit. You know, perhaps you could also get away with using a heat shield in that area. We've got some of that available on the website as well. So I need to grab myself a T-handle here. The way this fairing fits, it actually slides in over top of the oil cooler a bit, so you want to do that first, all right, and then come back here. These are the stock quarter-turn fasteners, pretty cool, right? I'm just going to continue to reuse those. I don't see any reason to replace that. And we'll go to the other side, same thing. There are 2 spots on the lower. Just grab it all in place here. Okay. Got our deuce fasteners here, connecting the upper and the lower fairing together. Like so. On the other side. And that'll leave us with, we got 2 fasteners up top. We'll do those up once we lower the motorcycle. Got our front fender. See, that's all going pretty well. Okay, when I come back, we'll be installing the front fender. Okay, front fender. I haven't even tried to fit this yet. I just drilled each one of the holes right in the center. Slip that bad boy into position. And bolt it up. We reused, when we did our ABS elimination, we actually reused this factory mount for the brake line because it had the front wheel speed sensor retained as well. So I felt that was important to carry that over. You want to make sure when you get the fender on, especially its race bodywork, you're going to have clearance for tire warmers. All right, so pay attention to that front and back, right? And make sure before you go to the track that you do have proper clearance and you've got it installed correctly. Okay, you don't want to get to the racetrack and find out, whoa, that's too tight there at the fender. I'm not going to be able to get my tire warmers in. Okay, you've got good gap front and back. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Get these snugged up. Remember, we sell the majority, it depends on the kit, right? If there's a tank cover, it's gonna be a few bucks more. Okay, we sell the majority of Hodbodies race bodywork for about $500 delivered to the lower 48, okay? Which makes it, bar none, the best value in race bodywork. You know, I mean, one can argue there, you know, we sell some other stuff too that fits a little nicer, no doubt. You know, and if you're that customer and the money's not the object, you know, it's all about the fit, and absolutely step up, buy the other stuff for sure. You know, you're gonna get a little better fit with it. But at the end of the day, the value this stuff provides, in my opinion, makes it, you know, the right choice for so many riders, and that's why I got involved with this project, you know, and tried to really help to get this fit dialed in, you know, and being able to keep that stock ECU mount point I thought was critical, you know, for my use and for my customers as well. Okay, clearly see zero issues there. And remember, this is some of the first stuff they made. Okay, so this is almost prototype level stuff. Okay, all that's left is 2 fasteners up top. We've got our 2, we're going to use our OE fasteners up here again, right? Drop that bad boy into place. And I'm using this because I can't get my T-handle in position here, so I'm actually just using this socket right here. That's nice and snug. Good fit. Come over the other side. Tighten that one up. Okay, now we can take this one step further, okay? You look at all this open area in here, okay? Normally that's just how it would be. What I'm gonna do is we really want to have this thing, you know, kind of a real clean, finished look. I'm gonna install these 2 closeout panels, right? Like so. Because we're using this stock piece here, all right, we're able to put the push pin through the rubber, like so. We have the majority of the stuff in play that's going to hold this. So, got the push pin in the rubber, boom, and then up front here, on the stock stay, got a little push pin that's going to go in place, like that. Look at, I mean, that looks sweet. It's all professional, all the wires are covered up. Dip this one into place, push pin in, and get down in there. And that is plenty to hold that in there. And here's your finished product, man. You know, it's a $500 set of race bodywork. I showed you what it took to fit it. Okay, you didn't see drilling the holes and stuff, but in this equation, I really couldn't show you that because, right, I was mocking this up. I mean, I cut off huge pieces off of both sides, refinished that, and they're gonna adjust their mold based on the work I did there. And at the end of the day, it's gonna allow you to use your stock ECU. As I said, these panels are really affordable. My goal for paint is I'm gonna paint it exactly the same as the stock bodywork that came off it. I want this thing to look the same on the street as it does on the track at the end of the day. So that's what I'm gonna shoot for with this painted set. I'm actually gonna have it painted while it's out there in California, hopefully. So here you have it. This is our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R1 Hodbodies race bodywork install. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketractor.com.